Hello everyone, and well, if we treat this more brilliant, and thanks for doing all this. I've changed my stream routine. I usually stream around 2 p.m. receive, but it seems strange to, I don't know if this is a way to say it, but anyway, hopefully how are you? So, yes, this is a new time for me to stream, but I have a lot of my friends with me. So, this is the time I have consistent Wi-Fi. Anything between, I'd say, 4 to 8 p.m. my time is reasonable. Check out to me. Let's see. Let's see. Is this better? Let's try that. Is this better? Could be worse. I need to get a proper Wi-Fi, frankly. So let's just do quick, a lot better. Fantastic. Okay. So the software is Houdini. I've been working predominantly in Houdini for these streams, mainly because I don't have that many excuses to work in Houdini, at least professionally. So the streams are a bit of a way for me to explore Houdini further and practice it a bit, reiterate things I already know, explore some new techniques, that type of thing. So this was all built during my other streams. I believe I've done 3 or 4 now. Supposed to be more, but as I mentioned earlier, I've been having technical difficulties with Wi-Fi. So on the account of me changing my usual streaming time, I'll be just doing a quick walkthrough for how I got to where I am now. Because obviously, if you've not watched my streams before, we've got a full ranting going on here, and no clue of how we got here. So I started this project in December, but I've not had that much time to dedicate to it. So due to that, I'm a little bit rusty about what's going on in this network, but we'll see how it goes. For today, I'll be predominantly, as I mentioned, doing a walkthrough, but I'll also be looking at implementing some extra details. For example, for those of you that have watched my previous streams, a big struggle has been figuring out a procedural way to select every second row of faces for specifically the roof to get these extruded. Quick disclaimer, I found this picture on the internet, it's not my work, I couldn't find the creator of it, so I'm not taking any credit for that. It's just something that I found, it's inspired me. I'm not going to create a one-to-one of it. This is just inspiration. We'll see how far we get. The reason I chose it is it's perfect for doing procedurally, because it's repetitive and it's pretty, and again, that's pretty is not a very good reason for doing it, but you know what I mean. And the other thing to notice is this is free lanterns, but due to the repetitive parts, if I build this network correctly, I can create any of them using the same network. So that would be the end goal. We're not currently there yet. I'm just quickly going to turn the AC on if it's going to do something. Alright. Because it's summer here. It's alright. Let's get right into it. The base of everything is a cylinder, which I'm not going to template, I'm actually going to view this. Very basic, just a cylinder that I then use to just basically create this area. Now, you'll notice this area isn't exactly visible in the final. I could potentially turn this into glass if I wanted to, but this is mainly just to give me a base to place things and copy things onto. It's not going to be visible in the final. I don't plan to add a glass to the lantern, but I could potentially use this for that. And then if we look a bit further to the right, we can see that we've got just a base pedestal, and from this is basically the same as this original cylinder over here, but just quickly going to template that so you can view both. I wanted to program it in. I said program. I wanted to set it up in a way that if this cylinder scales, and I'll demonstrate this further down the line, I wanted the pedestal to scale accordingly, which is why you'll see I've got information copied into the radius, both the inner and the outer. And I've also got a control set in place for the height, which is all the way down here. But we'll take a look at that in a bit, because, well, there's a lot more that goes into it. Right, so I've got the pedestal on the bottom there, and I've transformed it just to flip it over so it's at the bottom, and I fold the faces because I do want a top and a bottom on this. And then I did a copy and transform, which basically just places it at the top because I do want the pedestal to be on the top and the bottom. And I call it a pedestal. It's not really a pedestal, but it looks a bit like a pedestal to me. So for the sake of the argument, it's a pedestal. So having said that, we've got that going. We can quickly view it together and we can kind of see what we've got going on here, which is actually not much since I've voided this area here. I'll talk about the groups in a bit, but yeah, that was the original starting point. It was just 2 cylinders, basically 3. So beneath the cylinder, you'll notice we've got a group for placement, and that places these pillars as well as, I believe, these ornaments on top of the pillars. So how I created those groups, it's just a bounding region. Now this is not the most procedural ideal way of doing it, but it is what I decided to do. But basically these bounding boxes will scale according to the lantern, which I'm quickly going to demonstrate just to get that out of the way so you can kind of see what goes on here. Let me just view everything together. Right. Now, I might have broken some things at some point because, as I mentioned, I've worked on this a couple of times. It was a while ago, but we're going to see if I can figure this out. Right. But basically, we've got a scale that scales the width. We've got something that scales the height, and everything adjusts accordingly. Now regarding the width and the height, I've basically taken this value and copy and pasted it into our cylinder for the outer radius and the inner. And I've adjusted a little bit because I want the top and the bottom of the pedestal to be wider than the original cylinder. And then obviously I've pasted the height info, which is this info. Here I've just basically copied that parameter and pasted it into this. Right, so that pedestal. Moving on from that, we've got the archways, which would be this one on the exterior, which is actually very difficult to see without the inner thing. So let me just get that so we can view it a little bit more easily. Right, and let's get some lines in there. To why I showed it, right. So basically what I'm talking about is these archways that go around here and the inner ones, and it'll also showcase, let's say, the flower for the sake of the argument. Right, so moving on from that, how did we build the archway? That's going to be, the start of that is going to be a line. Just a basic line, not got much information. Now the thing about Houdini is, it's all information, right? So you've got points, you've got vertices, you've got faces, you've got edges. Basically the same as other software, excluding the points. A point is a little bit like a vertice. It's not 100% the same, but for the sake of the argument, it's basically the same. But the downside of using something like a line is you don't have any other information. You need to tell Houdini what other information you want. For example, I haven't got normal information on this. So if we view normals, which is this button over here, there's nothing. And the method I'm using to shape these archways is normal based. So I need normal information in order to shape them. So I've built an attribute. It's attribute create, and we've got the attribute is named n for normal. It's a vector, and it's just set to 1, so it goes in a direction. 0, 0, nothing, and 1 is 1. I've explained that very badly, but you get the point. And then we've got a resample just to get more information. Resample is a bit like a subdivide, but not quite. It's best used for curves and edges and things like that. It's not ideal for subdividing an entire piece of geometry, but yeah. So that's a resample, and then we've got an attribute VOP that determines the actual shape. Now, to explain how we got from the resample all the way to half an archway is basically this, right? So Houdini gives you a few things by default if you create an attribute VOP, and that's this information here and the output, right? So it's got a lot of information that you'll commonly use. You've got point values, you've got age, life, ID, color, UVs, normals, time, point numbers, etc. It's a lot of information, but it does not give you everything. So if I quickly hop back out here, you'll notice in the resample, I think it's a resample. No, yes. Resample comes with a thing called curve U. Now, what is curve U? Curve U is again just a way of getting different information, but it makes the form of a gradient, which I'm quickly going to visualize. So if you press curve U, you can see that's the gradient. Now this comes in different colors. Obviously, it's not quite 0 to 1, but for the sake of the argument, let's just hop back in here. But you'll notice down here that there's no curve U built into this. So for that, you use a bind, and then you just name curve U, which you've enabled back up here at the resample, and then you get the ramp, which you use to shape the actual archway. Now you'll notice that this shape does not correspond with the exterior shape. That's fine, we're going to ignore this, but basically I imported the curve U, I added a ramp, changed it from RGB to spline, and I actually don't want to break that, so let's just undo that. Don't be like that. Okay, it broke, that's fine. Let's do... No. I can't remember what it looked like. Did I really just break that? As these things go, during a string, something's going to go wrong. So let's work with that. What are we going to create? I think this was probably all the way up there, and then we've got the curve over there. Now more things might have broken, but let's just bear with that. Right, so once you've got your curve U imported, you've got your ramp set up, then you can use this place along normal, and into that you just put your point information and your normal, and then the amount is determined by your curve U. And then you output it into your points. Alright, so from there you've got your lovely archway. And if you mirror that across, you've got, again, an archway, but we're going to run into a problem here because you'll notice the normals are facing funnily, which is fine, but that's going to be a problem with the sweep mode. Because the sweep is often normal based, you can get away with a lot with just a basic circle, whatever, but if you're doing an archway or anything that's a bit more intricate, you're going to have to at some point determine the normal direction and alter it. because at the moment it's facing the same way and the reverse of the original line node, which is fine, but it's not going to work. But let's continue. Right, so the next thing is, I've mirrored it, but there's still points on top of each other. Now, there is a consolidate seam in the mirror node, but I find it's sometimes faulty. So, from there, I often use a join node, and that just basically merges the two vertices that are on top of each other. And I'm not sure if you'll see it on stream, but there's like a 10 there. And if we actually view this, you can see the numbers kind of overlap and it gets muddy. That does mean there's 2 points on top of each other, which is not going to work for a sweep because we need one continuous line sweep. Right, so that's joined, and then if we quickly view the normals, you'll notice again, it goes to the left and goes to the right, and the left or the right might be flipped due to my webcam, but you get the point. And then you get the orient along curve. Alright, so that is very useful, already built into the software because Houdini is brilliant. So that just flows along the curve all prettily. Hi Zizop Fusion, how are you? So from there I transformed it, just reshaped it. I wanted it smaller, and I wanted it to be determined by the scale of the overall lantern. So by that I mean what? Just quickly going to jump back down here, and I want to view everything actually. Oh, we do not want all the point in the normal and the curve view. Let me just turn the curve view off. Where is it? So we can get rid of that and just quickly get rid of the number so we can actually see what's going on. But basically the transform that is up here. Alright, so you'll notice there's information copied into the, I believe it's the X and Y scale. Yeah, it will be X and Y because it's just X, Y, Z. Right, brilliant. Voice too loud. Let me turn that down. Is that better? Still too loud? Oh, no, wait, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Right, is that better? Hopefully. So, right. Getting my thoughts in order here. So this information is coming from the control node, which is basically just if the width changes, I want the archways to adjust accordingly. Right, brilliant. Again, let me know if my voice is still too loud. I'll adjust it accordingly. I'm usually too quiet. Right, so where was I? Right, so we've got the transform node. That's all brilliant, and then I've just grouped it so I can specify in the and down the sweep which archway I want to be which thickness, because maybe I want one archway to be thicker, maybe I want some to be thinner. Basically, I want to be able to alter it at some point, right? So for the inner archways, it's basically the same thing up till this point. I'm just moving it over to the side a little bit. So it's not in the center because I want two next to each other. So I've then got a mirror node, and you'll notice there's a slight gap in between, and this is just so that when I sweep these archways, they don't overlap because I don't want geometry inside of geometry. Now, again, sometimes that is unavoidable, at least with procedural modeling somewhat. You can do a Boolean just to clean that up a bit, but I'd quite frankly recommend doing a retopology at some point down the line if you were to use this as the final model. But for, for the purposes of doing the actual procedural modeling, it's not that important as of yet, because this won't go as it is into a game engine or even Maya. You would either do a remesh or you would do a retopology at some stage, probably a retopology, because it's like zero mesh in ZBrush. It's okay. It kind of does the job, but it's not ideal or perfect. You don't really want to use it as is, because it's not optimized and it's not pretty and it's just wrong, right? It's a shortcut, and sometimes it can save you some time, but it's in the long run you will regret using it. So bottom line is, do retopologize at the end of your workflow. So again, we've got our inner groups, which is for the inner archways. So that gives us everything. Well, I can't really let me add another merge because I don't want to combine these all together. Just so you can kind of view them together. So that's going to be that one, and that gives us that, right? Which is great, but then we've also got a flower at some point, so we can quickly view the setup of that. Or what is on the side here? That's a profile of the sweep. So let's do the flower first. Right, so the flower starts with a line, same as everything else. Also, normal things, I need normals, I need co-view. I'm going to use attribute VOP to shape it, which is this shape. Then I'm mirroring it across, the same thing as the other ones. We've got a join, again, repetition, orange long curve, transform. Now this is the brilliant part. I can copy a network and I can completely change the shape and I can build something new from it. So, right, fantastic, we've got that. And then I believe in the join, I'm actually connecting closest ends, which is not something I typically do, and I'm doing a wrap last first, which just gives me basically a plane. It's the equivalent of a plane. So yeah, from there we're going to do a copy, and I believe copy and transform, which basically just means it copies it in a direction. It's a bit like duplicate special in Maya. So I'm using that, and it's copying 360 degrees. And then I'm just transforming it to be down in the center. You can also use a match size for this, which is probably the better method of doing it. But at the time, as these things go, you don't always do the most practical method from the start, right? So sometimes you have to just get the job done, and then you can adjust later. Now I actually think I will replace this with a match size at some point, but at this stage it's just not. Oh, actually let's do that while I'm here. So it's going to be a match size, and we're doing that, and I want the center to be, I believe it's Y, and that's going to be minimum. Now that means, in theory, if I, for the sake of argument, scale it, it stays down in the center. So brilliant. So I'm going to replace that with that, and then there you go. Now you'll notice the geometry is very wonky in the center. Not ideal. So from there I've done a Boolean. It's just union, so that just gives me a point in these corners here. Because if we go back to the match size, you'll notice there's edges there, but there is no points, which again, not ideal. So we're just doing a basic Boolean function just to get that point in the corner there. And now this is a labs node. Labs doesn't come default with Houdini. It is a plugin. It's free to download. It's easy to download. So you can just download that. I can actually quickly showcase that. So that's going to be, let's get the launcher. Now, so that's just going to be here. And you go to install packages and you can choose your, I believe it's that one. No. There's that one. I believe. You can just choose whichever one you want. I've got 2.5 for the sake of the argument. Right, so that's just that. It doesn't have a lot of nodes I use, but there's some things you just really need. And now there are other methods of doing this. You can see how this is actually built over here. Which is all very scientific, not very scientific, but yeah, that's the behind the scenes of how that actually works. But I'm too lazy to build that myself, and quite frankly, I don't quite have the knowledge for it, so I just use the labs function to solve that. It is very, very useful. Right, from there, we've got a resample, which I'm not sure why we have a resample. I think that was just for in case I ever needed more points to reshape it or whatever. I just wanted it cleaner. I don't believe I'm currently utilizing this function. In fact, if we avoid it, probably nothing happens. Right, so from there we've got a blast, which... Now why did I manually go and select those? That is all very interesting. I generally do not like manually selecting points because it's not procedural and it's just not ideal. Now again, this node network was built a while ago, so we'll see why I did that. But most likely I was too lazy to manually go, well, to figure out a way to get rid of them. Right, so we've manually selected those, not ideal, but it is functional. Then I've just got a bunch of different controls that's coming all the way from my control down here that basically determines the size, the shape, and the placement of the flower. Right, fantastic. So that's that. Then we've got a curve from edges because I only want the curve. I do not want the inner faces. Same as the archways, we've got an orange long curve just to get the normals all pretty. And then we've got a group. Right. So that's that. Moving on. This is all merged together to make this picture. And then I'm using the groups to specify what gets switched, right? So that's that one, and this one. So I'm also adjusting the thickness of the sweep because I want some areas to be wider than others, so that's the point of that. So you can kind of see it over here. Now, regarding the profile, it's very similar to, I'd say, the flower, at least in its setup. So we've got a cube, which I'm then selecting by normal direction, which looks like that. I'm just quickly going to frame that selection because otherwise it goes all over the place. So that's basically selecting these areas here. And then I'm extruding them outwards because I want like a cross type of shape. And then from there we're creating a group based on boundary box, which again is going to be basically if I change the, what do you call it, the box size, the original box size, the selection box will scale accordingly to match up. And then from there I'm just blasting everything that's not selected and dissolving flat edges, because if I have edges on these interior areas here, that'll create inner geometry within the sweep. Basically there will be faces inside the sweep. If we go down here, basically there will be faces along in the inside here. Now you'll see there's a slight overlap. Not ideal. You'd probably want to boolean this together and get rid of the inner faces and so on. But that it will be done in the final cleanup. I'm not going to do that now because I just want to get the overall shapes in place at this stage. Right, so that's been merged together and that gives us this pretty picture. So that's fantastic. And then I've got a transform node that's just flipping it upside down. And we've got a copy and transform, which copies and transforms it around in a circle. Basically the same that we did for the flower, just for the entire archway. In a different direction as well, because the flower goes that way, and this goes this way. Right, so from there we're doing another copy and transform, which is just placing these archways on top of each other and fusing them together. Brilliant. Right, so we're almost through everything. So from there we've got what else? So this is the rooftop. Now again, I'm going to skip over the archway itself because it's repetition of what's already there. So you can kind of, where is it? Go. Right. Let's see what's going on here. So again, line, attribute, create, resample. The sort is used to get the point numbers to go from 0 to 10. Now this is relevant down the line. So it does that. And then we've got, again, a shape, just an archway shape. But this time we're not going to create a mirror for it. Instead, we are going to revolve it around. Again, Maya does have this type of function. I'm not quite sure what it's called at the moment. I'll have to think, but it basically does the same thing where it revolves around the shape of the curve. Right, brilliant. Then I've just got a group and this is where the sort comes into play, right? Because at the beginning it was going from 0 to 10, which is fine. But if I ever changed the number of points on that curve, I've now got a problem, because the 10 can then be in the middle of my curve. Let's say I change it to 20. Now I'm at the 10, the point number 10 is in the middle. So I wanted to select the top point. So due to that, I needed to find a way to isolate it to a single number. So I flipped it because 0 is constant. So no matter how many points I add, there will always be a 0. And due to using the sort node, it's always going to be at the top. So technically, it's a bit of manual selecting, but because it's been altered to be constant, the answer will always be 0. Right, so that's that. I've also got a group range for the top point of the center of this. So this will be used to place the upper portion, right? So because my line is at the center of the world, it's not going to change from the center of the world, everything like that. I can just select the top point and then be done with it, basically. So that's that, and that's fed down into the bottom and getting copied, and this is getting copied on top of that point. Now, having said that, this is all, again, the same repetition. It's just a line with the attribute VOP, with a curve view, with normals, everything, and it just revolves around. Same thing, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. For the circle, it's just a curve that's swept. Very, very basic, so I'm not going to go into that. And if you merge it together, you get the roof. Brilliant. That's then transformed to move according to the scale of the overall lantern, which again you can see down here. If this gets taller, the roof moves up accordingly without actually, if you scale Maya or Blender or whatever, it would stretch, right? So I don't want that stretching. The archways do stretch because they have to. They don't technically have a choice. They have to stretch. Otherwise, they would be a disconnect between the top pedestal, so this area here, and the bottom pedestal. That obviously the archways would stay on the bottom, but if the top moved and the archways didn't stretch, there would be a gap and separation in this area here, which I did not want. So the archways do stretch, but the pedestal on top of it and the pillars and all that don't stretch. Right, fantastic. So that's that. Then we've got 2 more areas, and then we can actually get into the fun stuff. So pillar, it's just a box that's transformed to be skinny, and we've got a group that's again determined by normals, and then we are doing what here? What am I doing here? So that's the pillar detail, so that's one group, and okay, yeah, it's all normal base. So this is 2 separate groups that have nothing to do with each other. One is create details in the pillar, and one is to select the bottom and the top, right? And then we're doing extrude on the top ones. That gives us that shape. All fun and games. And then we've got another extrude that's insetting this area, which is the let me go back, which is these faces basically. So that's all brilliant, well and good, and then that's just extruded inwards to give a little extra detail. Right, so that's that. All very straightforward. We've got ornament. Again, it's just revolved, transformed, and this is copied to, let me just quickly select that so we can see where that information is coming from. It's copied to these points at the top of the original cylinder. So that's all well and good, and if you combine it all, you've now got lantern. So that's all very fun and games. Now, I've mentioned this before, but my biggest challenge with this project has been figuring out a procedural way of selecting every second row of faces to get these types of extrusions, right? Because I do not want to manually select them. Now, I've done a few procedural courses and they all implement some level of manual selection, which is fantastic and gets the job done. But I also want to know how to do it without manual selection. So, bearing that in mind, I've now found a way to do it, finally. Now, the course or the video I watched, I'm not sure which one it was, but it was one of the railway ones, and they use it for something else, but it does work for this as well. So, bearing that all in mind, we're going to go down to the revolve here. And we are going to need an attribute create. Create. Don't be like that. Let's do attribute create. Fantastic. Right. Now, if we look at this roof, we've already got a lot of information in this. We've got the point number, we've got points as a whole, we've got normals, we've got everything, and we kind of want to use the numbers, right? Because if you look at the numbers, which is actually not very obvious right now, but these ones are all odd, that one is all even numbers, this is all even numbers, that's all odd. Again, rinse and repeat, right? One row is even, one row is odd. Which means we can somehow use that information. Now I'm quickly going to split screen and show you what I mean. And I want the geometry spreadsheet just so we can see what is going on here. Now this attribute is going to be called, I don't understand topology for game assets and props. Can you make a video for it in Maya? So Heather is doing a lot of retopology work at the moment in ZBrush. So if you take a look at the Firestorm YouTube channel, which should be linked down below somewhere, there is videos on topology, and this will count for any software, right? So it'll count for Maya, it'll count for ZBrush, it'll even count for Houdini. Topology is topology no matter what software you use. So your techniques will differ a bit in the sense of whether you're using Quadral versus the retopology tools in ZBrush versus the retopology tools in Houdini or Blender. But the overall technique of how your topology should flow is constant. It's always the same. Some studios have specific ways of doing things, like they will have prerequisites for how your topology should look. But as a general rule of thumb, as long as it's optimized and flows in a nice way, you're good to go. I'll take a look at, let me see, maybe I can quickly find a video for you on retopology from our channel. So that's going to be Firestorm Studio, and let's see. Let us see. No, we don't want sound there. Okay, so it's not specified whether it's topology. So that's going to be streams. Let's see. So that's nah. Okay, so we've not got it specified on our channel, which is very inconvenient. I'll give Heather a shout on that. But there will be a time where we probably will do more tutorial style videos. Currently our streams are more what just work styles. But in the future we'll probably do more tutorial style stuff. So I'll put a note down that we need to do more topology stuff. But if we quickly, I'm getting off track here, but that's fine. It's specifically for props, right? That let me just quickly check your message again. Game assets and props. So let me do that. And find a resource for you. Right, so generally speaking, for props especially, and actually anything, you want to start off with quads. Triangles are not your enemy, but you do want to start off with quads because it's easier to add edges, it's easier to remove edges. So rule of thumb, start off with quads, and then I'm quickly going to give an example of that. Now this is a very basic object that makes it very simple, but if you look here, you'll see it's all quads. Now from there, you can condense it down to be more triangulated. Oftentimes with games, they'll eventually look something like this, where this is not a very high-res screenshot, so it is a bit, I say screenshot, it's not a very high-res image, so it's a bit difficult to see. But you'll notice the original was quads, if you look at the corner here, but they then condensed down to go more triangulated to hold those corners because there's a lot of topology here. In fact, I think that's either 4 or 5, I think it's 4 edges that's determining that curve there, right? And that's connecting up at the corners here. Because if we had 4 edges going up, or 2 going up and 2 to the side, that wouldn't just add topology in the corners, it would add topology to the entire mesh, which is fine, but it's not ideal for games and it's not optimized. So in that scenario, it is better to condense the topology down and kind of reduce it into the corner here. So for games especially, triangles are your friend. For film workflow, it depends. Sometimes they are your friends, sometimes they're not. In terms of props are more lenient, right? So they don't typically deform, depending if they're organic object or not, but especially for hard surface object, they don't technically deform, so you can get away with a lot in both the game and film workflow. You don't have to worry so much. Obviously, correct topology is always better, but it's generally, yeah, you can make it work. So I'm going to quickly bring up another example here. So this is another example of how you can reduce it, and this kind of showcased what I talked about here, where if all these edges in the corner were going up and to the side, they would do something like this, right? And now we've not just got the 4 polygons over there, but we've now got it increasing the poly count in this area and that area, and so on and so forth, and it crosses over, and it's just a very unoptimized mesh. Now, this isn't the worst case scenario, right? Because
Okay, 62 tries, that is too many for what it is, but it's not like a train wreck. But if you're talking about a full asset, if everything is 62 tries in every area of detail, that'll add up real quick. You'll notice here in the screenshot actually that they do say it's not going to be deformed, it's for its static game prop, etc. So in that sense, this type of topology will work, and it's very much optimized. Still has the pretty silhouette, but it's a third of the polygons. In fact, even less than a third of the polygons, so that is more ideal. Now, for more organic shapes, let's say characters, there is a specific flow you do need to have. Now, there is sometimes triangles, but we try not to have too many of those in the face area. That really does a lot of deforming. For clothing, it's fine. Again, game engines triangulate in any case, but for the sake of keeping things pretty, it is better to have, how do I put this? Basically, your topology needs to be very even. Let me get a example of that, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm a visual person, so it is always better to have a visual reference of what I'm trying to explain here. You try to keep your polygons relatively even, relatively the same shape. This isn't the best example because you'll notice the topology is elongated in the neck area. It's not quite square, so that's actually a very bad example, but that's too high poly. Right, so here you can actually see the difference between a game and a form topology. A game will be more in line with this, where film topology will be more in line with that. A lot more polygons in the film version. I do work in both game and film, so I do use both methods. But for the game topology, you'll notice again, it's relatively squares. There are exceptions to that, but it's relatively square. And you can especially see in the neck area how much less topology there is in compared to this example on the right. So, point is, this will get triangulated once you go into the game engine, but the base is perfect polygons that are square. There are triangles. That is fine, but for the face area itself, where there is a lot of deformation, the base again started off as all quads. So I hope this helps and kind of gives a bit of a base for that. But yeah, general rule of thumb is triangles are great for optimization, but it is a good idea to start with the base of quads. Just because it's easier to add topology, it's easier to remove topology, you can always optimize further from there. Let me just quickly adjust the aircon, otherwise I'm going to freeze. Right, so moving on from that. As I was mentioning, we've got the roof here, and I want to select every second row of faces. So we've got the odd numbers, we've got the even numbers. I'm going to use attribute create, and we're going to call this attribute, for the sake of the argument, roof extrude. I think we might change that. We might. Let's do that. Right, so then this will be a primitive. Now, what is a primitive? It's a primitive is basically like a face, right? So we do want a primitive. We don't want the detail. We don't want the points. We don't want the vertices. We want the primitive. Now, we've got a couple of different options here. We've got float. We've got which vector. We've got integer. We've got string, float, array, integer, array, etc., etc., etc. But what we want for this is integer. Now, I've actually written this down because I keep forgetting it, but let me just quickly go back in my notebook here. Right, so there's two options that I generally use. I use vector or or float or integer, depends. But for vector, vectors have decimals. I do not want decimals because I want a full face, right? So decimal is out. So I don't want a decimal, I want a integer. Now integer is more, it's whole numbers, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. So I want an integer, and then for the value, because this is going to be a value, I want to say, it's going to look at the point number, so that is going to be at ptnum. Because Houdini has names for everything, right? So that is kind of the shortcut acronym, whatever you want to call it, for point numbers. So that's going to be at ptnum. And I wanted to select every second face. Now, if I remember the coding for this correctly, we've now got a 0 and a 1, right? Now, from here, I want to do what? I want to group based on attributes. So that's going to be group attribute, group by attribute, actually, I think. This could possibly just be a group too. Let's see. Roof extrude. I did look this up. I did practice it, or I say practice it. I did kind of see what it does. Right, so I don't think it's that. Let me think. That's the nature of Houdini. Sometimes straightforward, sometimes you remember correctly, sometimes you don't. But let's try group. See if I can work from there. And I only want let's try something. No. What is it called? I can't remember what it's called. That's very inconvenient. Let's do extrude. Right, let me go back. So that is integer, that is that way. Let's try if we flip it. Right, so let's view that. That's fine, but it's not that. Group attribute. No. Normal group. Just quickly see what's happening over here. So it has created this group from that. So let's do a blast just to condense it down. Let's see, and I don't delete non-selected, and that's going to be group 8. And we're going to view that. Right, so that is not what we want. So let's see. And now understand topology. Thank you from India. It's really cool to have a viewer from India, and I'm glad you understand topology, and I'm glad I could help. But if you have any other questions, let me know. I'd be happy to expand on the topic. Alright, so we've got the attribute create, we've got the ptnum, but that's not going to work, so that's going to be, I do think it's percent before 2 though. So I think that part is correct. We don't have a group. Let's just do a roof for now. We only want one. Do we want 2? I believe that stays. No, that's 1. So it's not a. What is it not? It's definitely not an edge. It is a primitive, and that is correct. So that's all fine and good. Then I do want it to select. Let me just quickly see. Base group. We don't want that. We want it selecting all the. So So that selects everything, right? So that is not correct. We can remove that group for now. Let's try if we do this roof. That selects everything. We do one. I wanted looking at the ones there. Create audit, no. Let's just see where the group is going. Point number, it's not point number. Well, that's primitives. I want a group. Why is it not giving me a group? Just name it group for now so I can just find it in my network. So that's going to be that one. And as you can see here, it's only selecting the point number one, which is not actually what we want. It's not actually what we want. Let's look at that one. So that's going to be that, and this needs to be primitive. Right, so I think I've just got it. So this was looking at the point numbers, which is the group or attribute, and I wanted to look at it primitive. So I believe if we now go and blast this out, we should in theory not be good to go. Right, so now it's selecting everything, actually. So let's go back up here and change that to 2%. No, it needs to be a space. And it's still not working. Why is it not working? It's not that. This was working brilliantly yesterday. What did I do yesterday? Add ptnum, that's fine. Integer is fine. Primitive is fine. Size is fine. This is a primitive. Name. Can't really be their name, that's the problem. That's not that. Let me just view what's going on here. So that's going to be that one. Right. So let me switch that. So basically what this is doing is it's showing me each face that has a different information on it. If this worked, this would all be the same color in strips like this, right? So this isn't quite what I want. Let's quickly change that to point. It's not point. It's not vertice. Detail. Detail is not what we want either. So that is a primitive. Let's switch that back around to, let's try 3%. It's not supposed to be 3%, so it's not that. We can try again the other way around, so that's going to be 2%. Alright, now, this is working. 2% is working. We've now got the every second edge, which is good. This is a good start. We've got that, but now we need a way to isolate this, right? So we've got zeros, we've got ones, that's all working. How do I isolate that information? Because we've not got the information. We want to do what? We don't want the group extrude, that's for sure. Because we only want second edge. Trying to remember whether I used a group for this or a group by attribute. And I don't think it was a group by attribute. Alright, so this one, base group is not selecting anything. Not got information there. So it does have to be this one, right? Let's see, if we do that, it's going to give us the extrude. Why have we got 2 extrudes? Right, so we've now got 2 groups. We've got 2 groups. So what this is doing, it's throwing 1s in the group 0 and 0s in the group. So for extrude 0, we've got 1s. For extrude 1, we've got 0s, right? Okay, so that should in theory now work. We go down here and we do that. Finally. Fantastic. We've got it. We've got it. We've got every second edge. Now, this works, but you could also change it so that it selects every, I believe you can do it every 4th. It depends on the amount of edges you've got going around. Because I've got even numbers, I have to work in even percentages, right? So if we actually go up to the, we just remove the unused group. Up here, we can change this to 4, right? Now, there's a bit of a caveat to that because just due to the number of edges I've got, I can't go higher than 4%. And if I do an uneven number, so let's do 3 for the sake of the argument, it does that, which is actually also a cool effect. It kind of goes in the circle around, but that's not what we want, right? And again, if we go 6%, because we've not got enough edges, it just goes wonky, right? So I'd say for this case scenario, 2% is the best. And then we're obviously blasting that out. And I'm going to do what? Probably extruding. Trying to think here what I want to do. I don't know if I actually want to blast that. I probably just want the group to use. So let's do that, and then we can add an extrude. And that's going to be poly extrude. Fantastic. Right, so now I can go and say I want everything in group 0, and I can, in theory, if I'm actually viewing the node, I can extrude that up, and we've got, finally got our little area that extrudes upwards. We could also potentially take it inwards instead, or whatever you want to do basically. And if we go down and we actually view it, we've now got it all set up all prettily, and I want to turn the roof thingamajiggy off so we can actually see what's going on here. And I want to do the same for these over here. So to do that, I'm not going to rebuild the entire network. I just want that one, probably this one, and I'm actually going to, might regret this because it's briefly going to break. It's briefly going to break, it's fine. But let's do roof extrude just so I know what each group does. Brilliant. I can remove the one that's unused. And I could potentially consider doing just deleting groups on this to clean up the information because we are getting a little bit of clutter down here. But that's a later problem. So we want the attribute grade, we want the group attribute, and we don't want the extrude for now. So let's copy that. And if we go down to roof ornaments over here, so that's going to be the revolve, we do that. So that's all well and good. I'm going to move this a little bit down just so I have some space, and I'm going to paste this information, which is the attribute create, into here. I'm going to change the prefix to roof ornament. Why not? We're going to do roof ornament. Got that working, and then I need to keep in mind that the primitive name has now changed. I just need to change it accordingly. So that's going to be roof ornament. And then for the actual, let's view that again. so I can just see what's going on here. Close that down, so that's all working in a functional. And then I can do the group by attribute. So we're going to do that roof. It's getting very long, but we'll work with it. Ornament, extrude, why not? And then we can add the extrude node. So that's going to be extrude. And we've got that, and then we can look at group 0, why not? And we've got that. Now this is fine, but I think I want to transform this probably to global. Does that fix it? It does not. I don't like, oh wait, okay, so firstly, 0 this. If I remember correctly, 0 that, change this to global, or like a global. In theory, if I extrude now, no, it still does not. That's very inconvenient. That is very inconvenient, because I do want it to... Nah, it's fine, we'll work with it. I do actually want to flatten the ground, but it's not doing that, so we'll just deal with it. Right, so that's going to be... I'm going to bevel this, because it's looking a little bit too sharp. Not a ton, just a little bit, and that's going to be probably 2 divisions. And then I'm going to exclude by angle, so we can adjust that a little bit. Because I only really want these edges to be affected. I might not get it perfect, but that's good enough. Right, so that's round. Do I want to be round? Probably. Let's see. That. That's probably fine. And then I can adjust the distance. That's probably fine. I also want these to tape a little bit in, so I wonder if we can do that. Insert it. Not by a ton. I'm taking a look at the upper corner here because I don't want this going wonky. It's already wonky. Probably from the bevel. Let's avoid that for a second and see what's going on with the top here. So, due to that, we're probably going to have to leave the bevel. At least for now. So let's try 0.01. Doesn't need to be so extreme. We're not going to get an inset out of these, but we could potentially twist it a little bit if we wanted to. Probably not. Right, let's leave the bevel for now. And I'm going to reattach that, and then if we go down and actually view the thing, remove our attribute view thingamajig, then we've got a more interesting roof ornament. I would actually want to do the same to this one here, so let's actually copy again the attribute creates and all that fun stuff. So let's do that, and then we can think, where is that? So that would be this one, I think. It is. Right, so let's do that. I'm going to paste the other information here so we can have that. I'm going to make a little bit of space and connect those up. So this is going to be a roof top ornament. Why not? So we're going to do that, and then we've got the group attribute, so that's going to be roof top ornament. And then we've got the roof. We can do that. Now these names are getting a bit too long. but they're functional for now, so I can always go back and change them at a later time. And then if we do the extrude, we just need to remove this one and re-specify. And then if we view that, we've got our little detail. Now I would probably want this to be more, so let's do 2, no, 5. It's about that much. And then I really do want to bevel these, but they do go to the corner at the top. Let's try bevel again, just to see what it does. So that's going to be bevel. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to worry too much about it, but if it does work, brilliant. So let's do increase distance. Slide on edges, no, auto, let's see. Detect. Maybe we can adjust this in a way that it actually works. Possibly, possibly not, but we'll work with it. I don't actually want this affecting that. Is this a problem? We're gonna leave the bevel. I'm not too worried about that right now because it's going to take a while to figure out how to get rid of the weirdness that it was doing at the top. So at that point, well, tough. No bevels for now. In theory, I could resolve this by either adding like little, just something at the top to prevent it from beveling. Basically, I'd need these to be actual quads and not triangles. So we've got that. Now I don't quite like how that's sitting. So I'm going to do what? I could probably rotate that so it sits better. But that's going to be a later problem actually. Let's just see what we've got for a full picture at the moment. So I don't want to template it, I actually want to do it. Alright, so that's looking better, a little bit more detailed. I actually want this to be the opposite of the top of the roof, so I'm quickly going to go back up to the poly extrude. Instead of selecting group 1, we're going to select, well, group 0, we're going to select group 1. So that sits nicely in between, which I actually really like. We've got that on that. That's all good and well. I might want a little spear on top here. Let's do that. So that's going to be which one? This one. And I'm going to want similar to what I did here. I'm going to want the top point. So that's going to be copy. And that's going to be for the resample, I believe. So that's going to be that one. Plug that in. Just view it so you can see. Okay, that's fantastic. I want to template that just to make sure it's actually at the top. And I probably want to merge this before that. Okay, so that's going to merge down there. To kind of explain my thought process here. So I build this at the scale of a default line, which is, I believe, a meter. So that's quite tall. So I don't want to add the top spear at that point and not merge it back down into the network before the transform, because the transform makes it tiny, right? So then I'll have a big spear at the top that's just floating, which is not ideal. So instead of doing that, I'm going to add the spear before the transform, merge it back into the network, and we'll be good to go. So that'll be a spear, and we'll do what? Do the spear, and I'm going to template that, so I can kind of see what I'm working with here. view of that. So that's going to have to shrink probably to 0.5 for that. I'm going to copy that parameter and paste it into the center because I want it to be flat on the ground. You could potentially also use a map size for this, but I like having less nodes if possible. So in this case, I can adjust it here. So that's going to be divide that by 2. And that should flatten it on the ground. And in theory, if I now scale this up, we're good to go, right? So that's going to copy to points. And this is where the point on top of the line will come in. So quickly going to check that's target point to copy to, that's that one. And then I want this one to go into that one. Brilliant. So we've got that going. And then this is going to merge with that, that's going to merge with that, and then this is going to go into that. I believe. No, it needs to be before the transform. Now I've created a lot of wonkiness. So let's see. So that's attribute create. Leave that should go into that. This should go in that. And then in theory, let's see what we have. Now I don't actually want this to affect the group. So, let me quickly think. We've got the group by attribute. There should be a way to exclude. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a group and do that. So that's going to be a group. Kind of explain my thought process. I'm going to create a group for the ornament itself. So I can specify for the attribute create only to refer to the group and to ignore the spear on top, because the spear on top is not going to be part of the group. So we're going to do a group. That's going to be a group, and that's going to be ornament. Why not? And it is a primitive, and that should all be good and well. And then in theory, if I now go to the attribute create and say only refer to ornament, and then do the poly extrude, we're good. But the poly extrude is not just looking at the, it's also affecting the spear, and I don't actually want it to affect the spear. Right, so let's just see what's going on here. And that's fine. That's only referring to that. It's fine. We'll work with it. It can be like that for now. We'll just scale the spear slightly smaller. I'm not going to spend too much time trying to figure out why that's being weird. But yeah, just a little extra detail, copy to points, etc. And then we can see what it looks like. And it's all pretty. Now, the next thing I want to do is there is all these details, and I'm not going to add that much detail, but I do want to add a little bit of detail to these flowers. So let's do that. I also probably want to make the sweep on them a little bit smaller, just to make space. So let's see. Where is that? That is going to be that one, right? So let's just get rid of the template. And we've got that. Fantastic. So, I'll be adding the detail prior to revolving, prior to copy and transforming it around. So let's do that. It's going to be attribute verb. We're going to frame selected. So I'm going to probably add it at this point. And I'm going to try and think what I want to do. I'm actually going to template this so we can see what's going on here. Probably before that, actually. Right. So, technically speaking, only certain area of these are getting affected. Let's see. Probably want to be at this point. We're technically only getting this portion of it. Right. Now, this isn't procedural, or at least not that procedural. So it's probably not the best way of doing it, but it's not a bad way of doing it. It does the job, so we're going to do it this way. I'm going to add a, what are we going to add? A Bezier curve. So do that, and then we're going to template both. Let's template this one. We can forget about the exterior for now. So I'm going to then go in, and this will be mirrored across. So let's do draw mode, and that's going to have to be this one, I believe. No. This one. Yes. Right, so you have to be on this little thing in order to draw. So I'm going to kind of see what I can do here. Now this is getting a little bit inward, so that's not ideal, but I'll fix that in a moment. So let's do something like that maybe. I'll move this and we're gonna adjust at some point. Now another question would be, do we want this to be enclosed, or do we just want a curve that goes outwards? Choices. I'm just going to leave it at the default for now. Always adjust it afterwards. I do want this handle. So just see what's going on here. Now it's working against this one up here, which is fine. I'll adjust this one as well, and we can kind of, I don't know, start getting a shape that we can kind of adjust as we want later time. Now this is probably too big, so let's just condense it down a little bit. Come on, I want to move it. Right, middle mouse button does the trick. So let's do that. Why not? And then I actually want another curve that goes. Let's leave it for a moment, just for a moment. So that's going to be that, and I want to mirror it. So that's going to be a mirror. Now the original flower was built at the world origin, so this should in theory be fine. And then I do want this to be before that, so I'm going to merge these together. And that one will go into that. Let's just do a little bit of organization. Okay, let's just see if it works for now. So that does work, sort of. And let's just see what the rest happens. Okay, so that's match size, that's fine. Boolean is fine. What I suspect is it is going to go wonky. Yeah. So instead of doing that, I'm going to, instead of merging it down, because the problem is there's so many nodes that actually makes up this flower, and I want to kind of keep it a little bit separate. So I'm going to use a copy and transform on it as well, the same as I did for the flower, but I'm going to keep it separate, just so I didn't have to merge everything and destroy my entire thing. So we're going to remove the merge. That's going to go into that. I'm going to copy this across because I do want that, and then I do want the match size. Don't want the Boolean. Don't need the dissolve or the resample. Or the blast for that matter. only thing I might need is the transform. So, and I don't want the... Let's try merge it at this point. It is a bit risky that what do you call it? The curve from edges might mess things up, but I can probably prevent that by using a group. Okay, so we can do that actually. So let's do glass goes in. Come on. I'll be adding groups for these. One will be for the flower and one will be for the what? One will be for the flower, one will be for like the curve. So that'll go into that, transform, and then we should be good to go. I'll just move this further down. Alright, so that's that, and then I'll do a group. So the one group we're going to call what? We'll do group. We could probably use a name after it as well, but we're going to continue with the group, so that's going to be, the group is going to be flower. And then the other group is going to be a curve. So duplicate that, and that's going to be curve. And this will also help with the sweep, because I suspect we want a thinner sweep on the curves. So that'll work well. I'm going to merge that, and I don't want the curve from edges affecting anything other than... Why can't I reuse that group? That's very inconvenient. Transform. Right, so there's a problem. Why is there a problem? We don't want the match. We do want the match size, but it's now going... Because this curve detail is underneath the flower and it's kind of wider than the perimeter of the flower, we've now got a problem, because if we match size and it goes to the center of the world, or on top of the ground, it's not technically correct. So we could also offset that, but again, it's not going to be a perfect fix for that. But let's do that for now. I can always adjust it later to make it a little bit more procedural. Let's do that. Transform that now. It should be good to go. Curve from edges, it's fine. Orient is fine. Flower is fine. Okay, so we've now got two groups called flower. I only need one. So if we then go merge, which one is the flower? That one. We've also got a resample that's making everything wonky. So that's also not ideal. Right. Let's see where's the resample. Merge. Still fine at the merge. Still fine at the curve. No, it's not fine at the curve from edges. Or the transform. I really need a way to specify this group then. Well, that's inconvenient. It's crashed. As these things go. So I'm just quickly going to try and find the file. So that's going to be an Houdini temp local whatever. Okay, don't do that. Right, quickly going to find my file. So that's going to be over here. Of course it crashes on stream. Why wouldn't it? So that's going to be local. To be where is it? I did not memorize the file very well, apparently, so let's work with it. So it is local, that much I do know. It's not under, it should be under temp, surely. Surely it should be. Search temp. Houdini. Ha, Houdini temp, got it. Right, on this note, remember to save. I'm not very good at saving. I've been streaming for an hour and a half. I've not saved once. Do not be like me. So fun fact, off topic, but fun fact about Houdini. The newer versions take forever to open. When I started Houdini, the files opened within like 30 seconds. But the newer versions of Houdini open slower. I don't know why this is, and I've spoken to a few VFX artists as well, and they've had a similar complaint that it opens slower. So we'll just have to give it a second to load. Hopefully it won't take too long. It has, in fact, opened, just on the wrong screen. Right, fantastic. That did not take too long. So, I now know that around the curve from edges, it goes wonky. So, I think what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to move the curve from edges up till the blast. And just quickly see what that does. That's better. Right. Now, currently that's only sweeping that, and I actually think this is too thick. So, trying to see what I want to do here. Now, this geometry over here is not ideal, right? Don't technically want it overlapping like that. So that is a side note. Right, let's see. Let's try that for now, and this sweep is going to be the curves. Let's do curves. I don't want the flower. And regarding profile, we probably want this to go plus scale. And I want this to go. No, I actually don't like that very much. Where is the? Let's do Bezier. Get rid of that, and then we can scale this down a bit. Now this is a very sharp way of doing things, and I don't really like that very much. So let's just see if we can maybe alter it a little bit. So I'm quickly going to template that, and then I'm going to go up to the curve. So you can see it's kind of bumpy over here, and that's probably contributing to the problem. So let's just view that quickly. And I'm going to adjust things a little bit. Just to see what kind of looks a bit better. Now there's also not that much shape to it, so that is also a contributing factor, but let's see. So that is better, but we've also got a different problem, which is this. When I mirrored it, the normal direction also changed, which means the scale is not consistent. It's for the one side, it's scaling one way, and for the other, it's scaling the other way. So on the mirror, we're going to do that. And then for the scale, or not for the scale, for the sweep, we're going to reverse that. So that's better. And then I'm going to play with this a little bit just to see what I like. Maybe more like that. Right, let's just see what it looks like all together. And I'm going to do that one. Now there is an overlap there, which is not quite ideal. And I'd say this entire thing needs to be bigger. So that's going to be the width and the height. So that's the width. It's going to be, let's try 0.1. Oh, no, that's smaller. Is it? It is. Let's try 0.5. No, too much. Let's try 3.5. 3.5. Right, and then that's going to be, technically this is fine, it's just too high, so let's try, that's better, but I do want it a little bit taller, so let's try that, and then that's going to go down by a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit narrower as well. Right, so that's something. Now this is probably too intricate. Probably. But we'll work with it for now. I think I might want to add 2 more and have like one in here and another in there. Possibly. In the future. But we'll see. We'll see. Let's see what the full picture looks like first, and I'm going to remove this because I don't want the inner glass thing to show. Right, now we've also got this in the center here. Why did we have that? It's templated. Right. Don't want this to be templated. Trying to decide whether I like that or not. Right, I think what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to first duplicate that network so I don't lose anything. But I don't think I want this to be covering the, how do I put this? I don't think I want this to be in the center. It's just too something. I don't know what the something is. It just doesn't work for me. I think the alternative would be placing them in the archways here. I think that'll suit better. And then I could put something else at the top, potentially. I'm also going to scale the height a little bit. Because the next thing I don't like, which I probably need to change at some point, is this part kind of just flows into each other, and it's not really, it doesn't have a divide. I want some sort of divide at the bottom here. So, thinking of how to implement that. What I could potentially do is I can adjust the curve on the inner archways and have it like slightly widen in the center, and that could, in theory, help with that a little bit. So let's try that first. That's going to be the arches, and it's going to be the inner arches, so that's the one that's mirroring twice. So that's that one. And then it's getting sweep, so I'm just quickly checking which sweep it is. I probably need to label these. That's that one. So let's see. Just trying to figure out what is what here. So that is those. So in theory, if I add one there and one there, I don't want the one in the center though. So that one, come on, that one, that one. Okay, it's adjusting everything, which is not quite ideal. Just quickly figure out where that is. So that's that one. Let's put that there, that there. That's easy enough to replicate. And then we take these. scale them a little bit down. And I want to take this one, take it that way, and this one that way. Now this isn't perfectly symmetrical, but it is good enough for now. Alright, let's see if that gives us any form of a divide in the center there. It does, but it does not look good because it's kind of overlapping, right? In the sense of the center is overlapping. So we've got two options. I can either separate the arches more, have them even more separate from each other, or I could potentially mirror it at a later stage. Instead of mirroring it at the artwork, at the line or the curve, I could mirror it at the after the sweep. So that might mitigate that or not. It really depends. So what are we going to do? Or alternatively, I can add something beneath the sweep. Maybe I should do that. Okay, wait, I'm going to undo that. Instead of trying to get these repositioned, I'm just going to add a detail underneath them. Right, so to do that, what are we going to do? Let me think. I could just use a cube for now. I'm just going to use a cube for now. For the cause, I just want to see if the idea works. Once the idea works, I can obviously decide to swap it out at a later stage. So this needs to be tiny. So that's going to be that size. And we are going to scale it in the height. I'm not going to worry about the match size too much at this point. So I'm not worried about it being at the center quite yet. Well, it is at the center of the world. I'm not too worried about it being flat on the ground at this stage. We're just going to work with it as it is, and I'm going to move it to be in line with the edge of that. So, how far does it move? Let's just quickly, no, not that, don't want to do that. I'm just quickly going to see more or less what we're looking at. So that's a 0.4. There's got to be a transform here somewhere that's doing that. So that's a rooftop, it's not that. Got the arches, so the transform is probably this one. And that moves it according to the width. I'm going to see if I copy this value, if I can get it working. So that's going to be the box. And instead, well, the size is fine, we're going to move the center, so that's going to be into here, and that's going to be paste relative reference. Oh. That is nothing. Okay, so let's get the control, and that's going to be copy the width, copy the parameter, and get to the box, and we're going to paste relative reference. And then we're going to divide it by half. No, that's multiplying it. Why is it multiplying it? Just see if it goes further. It does go further. So let's try times 2 times 0.5. Right, 0.5. That's not going to do quite a bit of tricks, so that's going to be what? I really don't like going into the point whatever numbers, but we're going to work with it. Right, so that gives us that. But now the problem is as follows. This is firstly too wide. It's the perfect size for the one in the middle, but it is not the perfect size for the side ones. And now my original thought process was to place it on the edge and then copy and transform across. That's not going to work, however. So instead of that, I'm going to have two cubes. One is going to determine the outer two, and then one is going to determine the centered one. So quickly going to keep that one, duplicate it, and then I'm going to, no, not paste, delete channels, and that's going to be 0. Because that's working, right? And then for this one, I'm going to do that, template this. And then this will probably have to be narrower, so let's do 0.5. No, 7.5 maybe. Let's do 7.5, and that's fine. And then we are going to merge those together at some point, and we're also going to mirror it. So that's going to get mirrored, so that's going to be a mirror. There we go. That goes into that. Those are mirrored across, and then this goes into that goes into that, and then this all goes together. Like that. Now that doesn't quite work, but let's just see what it does overall. Now we've got a couple of things that's not working as these things go. I actually like what it's doing here, beyond the fact that it's too skinny, it needs too flat, it needs to be up a bit. But it's not working for the edges at all. So instead of doing that for the edges, I'll probably change the pillars themselves. So the pillar will only go to the halfway mark, and then I'll have another pillar on top of the... So basically the pillar will divide at this point, to put it simply. Right, so that doesn't work. We're going to remove these. And for this, I'm going to scale it. Probably not a uniform scale. Let's do 0.5. No, wrong one. That's going to be 5, maybe. And then that's fine. Let's try 1. Because it is a bit too big. And then I'm going to remove the template, because template is really making things confusing. Now this was a great idea, but I don't think this is the right shape for it. It just looks too... I don't know what, but let's try it smaller. Maybe we can mitigate that. Not 2.5. 0.025. No. 1. 0.5. Not enough. 7.5. That's not awful, but it's not brilliant either, quite frankly. Because it just does look like a cube that's been plopped in the middle, which it is. It is just a cube plopped in the middle. But yeah, it's just not working very well. But maybe if we add the actual variation into the pillars, it'll look better. Possibly. Other than that, other things that need to change is, again, we need to find a way to add further detailing to the lantern itself. I do think we're going to swap this flower out for something else. I do also think we need to change the curve so this archway actually lines up with the outer curve. So while I'm thinking about that, I actually think I'm going to do that because that's one of the easier things to do. So that's going to be this one. And then we can change that to be a better fit. Now, granted, that does mean the flower shape itself is not working, but that's fine. We'll change that as well to kind of fit with things. Now that actually creates a better shape overall. So, yeah, that's a good start. That's something. Other things that need to happen at some point is we need to find a way to clean up these pillars. Because right now we've got the archways going inside of the pillar where I don't actually want that. So there's two ways I can fix it. Either I can move the pillars further outwards, or potentially I could move the archways inwards so that they don't go so far. So we could potentially do that as well. But yeah, trying to think what else I want to change. Well, I'm thinking I'll probably do a little bit of cleanup, kind of see what's going on here, because I have changed things to this network. So that is, what is this? This is the rooftop. So I've got the merge down here, that's copying everything to points, that's fine. But I do want to move this down a little bit. At some point, I'll probably want to put these into sub-networks, just so it makes more sense. Because at the moment, I've got everything visible, and that's brilliant because I like working on all these different areas, and I'm still jumping a lot between one area and the next, which is fine. But the problem with that is it's getting very cluttered. It's getting to be a large network. I don't really know where everything is when I open the file, which is fine because I can figure it out. But if this node network gets bigger, it's going to start becoming a problem. A good thing, well, a good area to start would be putting the actual network that determines the curves into subnetworks, or just condensing them down, because that's things that doesn't change, because it will always be a line. I'll always resample for a curve view. I'll always add normals with an attribute create. I'll always have an attribute VOP. So in theory, I can condense that down just to hide it so that I don't have all this visual clutter. Because, for example, in this area, right, if I take the node, well, the line, which again, that's not never going to change, and I put all of these into a network, because I don't really need to see any of that. I'm not going to change any of that. It'll be better. I can even showcase that by not doing that, by adding one of these and just minimizing that. I mean, that's just better because I can it's less clutter and I can have it more condensed down. The downside of moving it like that is if I then expand it again, it overlaps everything. So that's why you would probably use a subnetwork instead of actually condensing it with a what do you call this? A network box. Instead of condensing it down with a network box, I would probably use a subnetwork. So yeah, that's that. Let me actually remove that. So the organizational stuff that needs to happen at some point. But I'll probably do that in between streams. That way you guys don't have to watch me organize stuff for eternities. It is a bit of a tedious process. And then the other thing I quickly wanted to do while I'm thinking about it is we've got all these sweeps and I don't know what any of them do because I've not labeled them. So that's going to be, let's say, sweep. It's going to be the curve. We don't want a double E there. And then we've got a sweep for, that is for the flower, so that's going to be sweep flower. Wow, this looks intense. It is a little bit intense, but it is a lot of fun. Procedural modeling, which this is very detailed. It's kind of like history. You're constantly working with history. So if you've not done it before, even if you open somebody else's network, it's very daunting. But it's not unmanageable. If you actually break it down, it's not that complicated. So if we quickly showcase what I mean by that is, let's quickly view this. Now, most of this lantern is built off of archways. So to simplify that down, now this looks very complicated because we've got 9 nodes that are making this archway, which is a lot. But if we actually look at it, it starts off with a line, which is basically like just edges going upwards. And you've got the point at the top and a point at the bottom, which is a bit like a vertice. But Houdini is a little bit, it has all this information you can use, but you need to tell it to use it, and you need to give it to the information. For example, you know how in Maya, Blender, ZBrush, everything, you've got a normal direction. Well, when it comes to a line, it's a bit like a curve. There is no normal information on it. So the next step, once you've got the 9, is to add normals. So normal is a vector. So hence I've specified that the name for it is n. Now you can use any name for it, but if you actually want to utilize the information, it's better to specify n, because Houdini knows n means normal, right? So once you've got that, the next thing you need is a gradient. It's a bit like how gradients work in Photoshop or Substance Painter or anything like that. It's basically just a value that's between 0 and 1. Now, where some values are just a 0 and 1, a gradient is obviously 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and variations on that, numbers in between and all that. So we need a gradient because I want the curve to be determined by the gradient, right? So Houdini has that built in for you. In a resample node, you can get a curve U. It also adds points, which is a bit like subdividing. It's not ideal for geometry, but it is ideal for curves. You can use it for geometry, but it just doesn't work as well. So that just adds extra points to work with and play with. And then we've got our attribute VOP, which is a bit of a network inside of a network. Houdini is built up of networks, so it can get a bit intense. But if we open that up, you typically get 2 pieces of information. You've got this node here and that node there. Now this node comes with a lot of preset things. It's got point values, it's got velocity, it's got force, age, life, ID, color, UVs, all that fun stuff. Now, you don't typically use a lot of that. I personally only really use point information and normal information. Quickly going to jump out here. But if you go to the resample node, which for the curve U, because that is another aspect of it. Curve U is that gradient, right? So we've just literally pressed the button to get that, and that's over there, right? Now, where this comes into play is in the attribute VOP. Curve U isn't built into the attribute VOP. You need to tell Houdini to go and look for the curve U information. So for that, you use a bind. And the bind, you just basically say it's a curve U, and the curve U is a float. It's not a vector, it's not an integer, it's just float. And then from that curve U, you can get your ramp, which is a little bit like levels. It's not exactly like levels in Substance Painter, but it is very similar. So you can kind of work from there. So that's again a float, so it goes from 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, etc., or 0.11, whatever you want to call it. And then because Houdini is absolutely brilliant, it has a thing called displace along normals, which basically just means it moves your vertices in the direction of the normals, which if you go back up here and we actually view the normals, we can see this is the direction the normals are facing. So the displace, it's going to get displaced on to in this direction. How long have you worked in this field? So I've been doing 3D for probably 3 years, 3.5 years maybe, around about there. But for Houdini specifically, I've only really been working in it for a year or two. Probably a year and a half, and not actively, because Houdini is very niche, right? It's used a lot for environment work, but I'm not an environment artist. I do predominantly characters. I enjoy environments a lot, but that's not where my career has taken me. So I predominantly do characters, which, funnily enough, the one thing I said when I started 3D is I never want to do characters. But that is where my work has taken me. So I've been doing characters, and I do enjoy that. But I'm not crazy about anatomy. I mean, I can do it, but it's not my passion. So I enjoy the clothing, I enjoy the weapons, I enjoy armor, I enjoy predominantly the hard surface areas, actually, and a little bit the cloth simulation side, or just making cloth in general. So I enjoy marvelous design as well. But the actual sculpting of the character is not my passion. So it was unexpected that my career took me in that direction. But in the future, I would love to work in the environment side. But especially in regards to Houdini, it's very specialized. You probably need to study specifically in that direction, especially for the modeling side. There is not a lot of resources for modeling in Houdini, or creating environments in Houdini. There are enough to get you the bare bone basics, but if you actually want to specialize in that, it's better to do a course, which I've not done yet, but it is on the to-do list. I just need to free up a little bit of time for it, because it's obviously very intense courses. So I know enough to help myself in Houdini, and I'm really passionate about it. But I don't know enough about it to fully implement it into my workflow career-wise. But that would be the end goal, honestly. But one can dream, right? There's always something to learn. Right, so getting back into what I was saying, which, as you guys have probably noticed, I get distracted very easily. So, getting my thoughts in order here. Right, so normal direction. Our geometry is moving in the direction of the normals due to the displace along normals in the attribute Rob. Right, but you'll notice that it doesn't go, how do I put it? It's not linear. It doesn't just go sideways in the direction of the normals. It actually has a shape, and that is where the curve U comes in. The curve U gives our values in between 0 and 1, so therefore it's not a constant that's going sideways. It's getting like a curve. So that is the purpose of using the curve U, right? So if we jump back out here, you can see that this is the ramp that actually comes from it. And that ramp can be altered to your heart's content, which is why procedural modeling is brilliant, because I don't have to go into a Bezier curve or any other curve and adjust it. I can just have this control built in that I can tweak to adjust to suit the project. So from there, getting back into why this is actually, yes, it looks complicated, but it's relatively simple. It's basically just point values and, well, just point information, normal information, and curve U. That's all that you use to build this curve. And then you just mirror it. Once you've got a mirror, you join it, because you can adjust this in the mirror node, so it's like a bit like merging vertices when you mirror in Maya or even Blender. But I find it sometimes a little bit faulty, so I like doing a join, which basically just combines the two. And then you'll notice the normal goes right to left. So one side goes to the right, the other goes to the left, which is fine. It's fine, but I want to sweep this. And the sweeps direction is determined it's determined by the normal, right? So if I want the sweep to actually follow the curve properly, I need the directions of the normal to be in line with the actual edge. So that's what the orient along curve does. It's all automatic. If I plug it in, it does it for me. I don't have to program it in because Houdini is brilliant. And then that's just transformed because I wanted a slightly different shape, and that's swept and so on. Very cool. Is this for illustration or animation? Alright, so not for illustration. I would say this would be more for animation. You wouldn't actually animate it though. Well, you could. You could animate this, but you don't have to animate it. It could just be a prop in the background or whatever it may be. So if I quickly get rid of all this information so we can see what we're working with. Right. Now this would need to be retopologized, right? So this isn't ideal for a game or even a film workflow. This is ideal for iterations, so creating different versions of lanterns that then later get sculpted or just retopologized, or you can make high poly from it, you can add pebbles to it, you can do a whole types of things to it. But as it is now, it would not be the best for either animation or even being a background prop, because we're still building it up. This is a bit like a blockout. Let's say you had to create 10 different lanterns. It would take a lot of time to create 10 lanterns. But if you build a network in Houdini that you can then later use to make 2 different versions of lanterns, that's better, right? Because you've got something that builds it for you procedurally. To kind of showcase that is I've got a control over here, and what it does is if I can adjust the height of the pedestals for some reason, right? You'll notice that if I adjust it to match, make it too low, there's a gap in between, and that's just, it's a flaw in my network, right? So proceduralism gets you very far, but it does have a limit unless if you spend enough time, you can eliminate those and you can make it even more procedural, but it takes time, right? So at some point you kind of have to make a call, what is procedural enough and what does the project need, because maybe they only need slight adjustments in the height of this area, maybe they don't need to adjust at all. Now this is all things you can kind of think about while you're creating the network, but yeah, getting back on track here. I can also adjust the height and the width. Now, every software has a scaling element to it, right? But the point of doing it in Houdini is I want things to scale uniformly and not move. Because the problem with scaling a Maya, for example, is, let's say I've got 2 objects and I scale it up. Everything stretches equally, where I don't want my roof to stretch. I don't want my roof to be taller. I just want this inner lantern area to get higher, and my roof needs to stay the same height. So that's what this does. You'll notice if I scale this up, the roof stays the same height. It doesn't go and squish. I can even make a tiny one, and again, roof does not squish. I actually like this lantern. Interesting. Right, so there's that. The same with the width. If I scale the width, my roof doesn't actually get flatter. It does look a little bit like it gets flatter, but it doesn't actually get flatter. And I can also adjust the height of the roof. And you'll notice if I adjust the height of the roof, my ornament on top moves alongside it, right? And it just moves alongside it, so I don't have to worry about repositioning in different areas to accommodate the scaling, which is absolutely brilliant, because maybe I want a short lantern thing. Maybe it's not a lantern, maybe it's something else, with a taller roof thing. Well, I've now got that. I can also, maybe I want the roof to be short alongside this. I can do that too. Maybe I want a different size ornament. Maybe I want these to be bigger than the rest. Now, again, this is within reason, right? Because now, for example, it's not actually on top of the roof, and that's not ideal. But still, these endless possibilities. Maybe I want, let me just get back to a reasonable size. Maybe I want the circular thing to be on the bottom as well, then I could do that. So to do that, let me go up and just see where, so that's copy and transform, it's fine. Trying to find where my rooftop actually is. So that's there, and then that's transformed. Right, so in theory, I can then take this transform instead of, I do want the scale to be the same. I don't need the translation, so I'm actually going to delete words of references there. No, come on, delete channels. And I'm just going to zero that out. And then I can flip it 180. So that's going to be on, let's try on the X value. So if we flip that and we merge it, and then that goes into there, that goes into there. Come on, there you go, there you go. And then if we go all the way down, we've now got a lantern that's got a top and a bottom. It's brilliant. And makes me very happy because I've now got two different versions. Now you can also obviously add these to down to the bottom as well, these little ornaments and so on. And if you wanted to, you could then make it that the bottom scales independently from the top. So let's say, take this, and we're going to go into edit parameter interface, and that's going to pop up, and we want, what do you call it? We want a float. That's going to be that one, and then that's going to be called, what are we going to call it? What are we going to call it? The other one is called rooftop, so let's just call it floor bottom. Why not? No, roof bottom. Let's do roof bottom. Why not? So that's going to be roof bottom. And then I'm just going to copy that down to the label. Brilliant. Fantastic. Accept that. Now, where is it? Okay, so I actually want this to be in a different, I want this to be above that. So let's see if I can move it up. How do I move it up? There's a way to move it up. Let's see. Come on. Needs to be a way to do it. Okay, we're gonna wear with it. So let's say copy that parameter and paste it into, where is my thingamajig? Paste it into the height. So that's the width. Let me just quickly see where that's being determined. Could it be earlier? It is actually earlier. We just quickly see what is getting affected by what. So that's not actually going to work for the reason my scale is determined much earlier up in the network. And my positioning is only at the end phase. So I'll need to find a way to split that out. You basically have to have two different networks. One for the top one for the bottom. They'd be basically identical, except for the scale and the transform node. Which is fine, right? That's fine, but that's not ideal because it does clutter up your network. You don't really want two of them. Now, is there a solution for that? Yes, there is a solution for that, but I have to play with it to find it. So yeah, that is a thing. But right, on that note, I think it's time to get going. So thank you guys for joining me. It was lovely having you guys, and enjoy the rest of your day. So yeah, bye everyone.